What if I told you some of Florida's fastest-growing cities are now quietly emptying out? Streets that once had bidding wars are now lined with for sale signs collecting dust. Homes that used to sell in days are now sitting for months, even slashing prices just to survive. And here's the scary part. This isn't random. These are the exact same warning signals we saw before the last major housing crash. But in 2026, the pressure is even higher. Rising insurance, falling demand, and investors pulling out fast. So the question is, how many of these cities are already past the point of no return? In today's video from Inside the States, we're breaking down 10 Florida cities that are starting to feel like ghost towns in 2026's housing slowdown. Number 10. Palm Bay. Once considered a hidden opportunity for budget-friendly living, this city attracted families and investors looking for value without sacrificing lifestyle. But in 2026, things are starting to shift, and not in a good way. The median home price has slipped from around $328,000 in 2022 to nearly $312,000, and while that drop may not seem massive, it's what's happening behind the scenes that's raising concern. A major issue right now is the investor exit. During the short-term rental boom, many buyers jumped in expecting strong Airbnb returns. But stricter regulations and market saturation have forced many of them to sell. That sudden wave of listings is pushing prices downward, creating pressure on regular homeowners too. At the same time, the price-to-rent imbalance is becoming hard to ignore. Renters are paying roughly $1,700 per month, while buying still requires a much higher financial commitment, with mortgage rates hovering around 7 to 8%. For many people, renting simply makes more sense, and that's draining buyer demand fast. Homes that used to sell within 30 days are now sitting for over 80 to 90 days. Add in stagnant rental prices and stricter loan approvals, and Palm Bay is starting to feel like a market that's slowly losing its momentum. Number 9. Port St. Lucie. Known for its family-friendly environment and rapid growth, this city was once one of Florida's strongest housing performers. But by 2026, the cracks are becoming more visible. Home prices have dropped from nearly $405,000 at their peak to about $375,000, a decline of over 7%. And that's just the surface. The biggest concern here is collapsing buyer demand. Out-of-state migration, which fueled the earlier boom, has slowed dramatically. Without that steady flow of new buyers, sellers are now offering price cuts, incentives, and even covering closing costs just to stay competitive. Another red flag is the rising number of failed deals. Nearly 1 in 3 pending sales has been falling through, often due to financing issues or low appraisals. That's a clear sign of instability. And then there's the growing burden of HOA fees. In some neighborhoods, monthly costs have jumped from under $100 to over $200, putting additional pressure on homeowners already dealing with high insurance premiums. Homes are still selling, but much slower. Average days on market have climbed from under a month to over 65 days, signaling a market that's clearly cooling. Number 8. Poinciana. Affordability. Once made this area incredibly attractive, especially for first-time buyers. But in 2026, that advantage is starting to disappear. Home prices have fallen from around $322,000 to nearly $290,000, a drop close to 10%. One of the biggest issues here is skyrocketing insurance costs. Some homeowners are now paying between $500 to $800 per month just for insurance alone. In extreme cases, that's higher than the actual mortgage payment, which is forcing many to reconsider staying. This has triggered a chain reaction in the rental market. Investors who once saw strong returns are now struggling as rental prices fail to keep up with rising ownership costs. Vacancy rates are creeping up, and some landlords are cutting rents or offering incentives just to fill units. There's also growing pressure from special HOA assessments, sometimes costing homeowners thousands of dollars for repairs and maintenance. That unexpected financial burden is pushing some residents to sell quickly, often at lower prices. Homes are now taking over 70 days to sell on average, And with population growth slowing down, entire neighborhoods are starting to feel unusually quiet. Number 7. Port Charlotte. Not long ago, this place felt like one of Florida's best-kept secrets. Coastal charm, affordable homes, and a relaxed lifestyle that attracted both retirees and young families. But in 2026, that peaceful image is starting to crack under serious housing pressure. Back in 2022, the median home price climbed to around $333,000. Fast forward to 2026, and that number has dropped sharply to nearly $285,000, a decline of over 14%. That's not just a correction, it's a warning sign. Many homeowners who bought during the peak are now facing negative equity, meaning they owe more than their homes are worth. One of the biggest issues here is the explosion in days on market. Homes that used to sell within a week are now sitting for 90 days or more. Entire neighborhoods have listings that just aren't moving, creating a sense of stagnation. Then comes the supply problem. Builders rushed in during the boom years, expecting demand to keep rising. Instead, demand dried up. Now, rows of newly built homes are sitting empty, and some construction projects have been paused or canceled altogether due to lack of buyers. And perhaps the most painful factor, insurance costs. Many homeowners are now paying between $7,000 to $9,000 annually. For some, that's nearly as much as their mortgage, making it financially unsustainable. As a result, more people are leaving, and that slow population decline is making things even worse. Number 6. Cape Coral. This city was once the superstar of Florida's housing boom. Between 2021 and 2022, prices skyrocketed as investors, retirees, and remote workers rushed in. At its peak, the median home price reached around $424,000. But in 2026, it has dropped to nearly $361,000, a steep fall of almost 15%. What's driving this sudden shift? A major factor is the investor sell-off. Many buyers who entered at the peak are now trying to exit before prices fall further. Currently, more than 25% of listings are tied to investors or flippers trying to offload properties. This has created a domino effect. When investors start cutting prices, other sellers are forced to follow. That downward pressure is accelerating the market slowdown. Inventory is another major issue. In just 1 year, the number of available homes has nearly doubled. Entire developments built during the boom are now filled with unsold properties. Buyers simply aren't showing up like they used to. And then there's insurance again, one of the biggest pain points in Florida right now. After recent hurricane impacts, many homeowners in Cape Coral are paying between $6,000 to $10,000 annually. That's like adding a second mortgage on top of everything else. Pending sales are also collapsing. Deals are falling through more frequently, and builders are quietly stepping back, pausing or canceling projects. On the surface, it still looks like paradise, but the numbers tell a very different story. Number 5. Northport. A few years ago, this city was booming like crazy. It became one of the fastest growing areas during the pandemic, with remote workers and retirees flooding in. In 2022, home prices surged to nearly $379,000. But by 2026, that number has dropped to around $321,000, a decline of more than 15%. The core issue here is overbuilding. Developers rush to meet demand, creating entire new neighborhoods almost overnight. But now, many of those homes are sitting empty. Supply has clearly outpaced demand, and that imbalance is pushing prices down fast. Another major concern is the rise in failed transactions. Financing has become much stricter, with higher credit requirements and larger down payments. As a result, over 30% of pending deals have been falling through, a huge red flag for any housing market. Foreclosures are also starting to increase. Some homeowners who bought at peak prices are struggling to keep up with payments, especially with rising insurance and HOA costs. Filings have jumped significantly, signaling deeper financial stress in the area. And just like the others, homes are taking much longer to sell. The average time on market has nearly tripled, now exceeding 90 days. That kind of slowdown creates uncertainty, and uncertainty drives even more buyers away. Northport still has growth potential, but right now, it's facing some serious housing challenges that are hard to ignore. Number 4. Deltona. For years, this city quietly offered one of the most affordable paths to homeownership in Central Florida. Close to Orlando, not too far from the beaches, it seemed like the perfect balance. But in 2026, that balance is starting to break. Home values have dropped from around $340,000 in 2022 to nearly $298,000, a sharp decline of about 12%. That's a serious hit for homeowners who bought at the peak. But the bigger concern isn't just falling prices, it's the shrinking demand behind it. One major issue is population slowdown. Families who once moved here for affordability are now leaving because the cost of staying has climbed too high. Insurance premiums are crossing $6,000 per year in many cases, and HOA fees have surged by 30% to 40% in some neighborhoods. As demand weakens, homes are sitting longer. What used to take about 30 days to sell now takes over 70 to 75 days. That's more than double, and it's a clear signal that buyers are stepping back. Investor activity is also reversing. Many landlords and flippers are exiting the market, adding more listings and pushing prices down further. On top of that, nearly 25% of pending deals are collapsing due to financing issues or low appraisals. Deltona may still look calm and suburban on the outside, but underneath, the housing market is starting to stall in a big way. Number 3. Ocala. Wide open land, peaceful surroundings, and relatively low home prices once made this area incredibly attractive. It was seen as a safe bet during Florida's housing surge. But in 2026, the reality is shifting. Home prices have dropped from about $280,000 to nearly $255,000, a decline close to 9%. While that may seem moderate, the deeper indicators are far more concerning. Insurance costs are rising rapidly. Policies that once cost around $2,000 per year are now jumping to $5,500 or even $6,000, especially for older homes. That sudden increase is putting pressure on homeowners and reducing affordability for new buyers. Another warning sign is halted construction. Builders who once rushed into the market are now pulling back. Several new developments have been paused mid-project, leaving behind empty lots and partially completed homes. Days on market are also climbing fast. Homes that used to sell quickly are now sitting for 80 days or more. Buyers are waiting, expecting further price drops, while sellers are forced to reduce prices or offer incentives. There's also a noticeable adjustment in property tax assessments. Local authorities are lowering valuations, which usually signals that the market itself is weakening. When even tax estimates go down, it reflects a broader slowdown. Ocala still has its charm, but from a housing perspective, the momentum has clearly shifted, and not in the right direction. Number 2. Tampa. Not long ago, this city was one of the hottest real estate markets in the entire country. Strong job growth, rapid population increase, and high demand pushed home prices to new heights. In 2022, the average home value reached around $383,000. But in 2026, that number has dipped to about $360,000. At first glance, that drop may not seem dramatic, but for a high-growth city like Tampa, even a small decline can signal a much bigger shift. The biggest red flag right now is the surge in inventory. Active listings have jumped by over 50% in just a year. Homes that once sold within 2 weeks are now taking 75 to 90 days, often with multiple price cuts along the way. Buyer financing is another growing problem. With mortgage rates hovering around 7.5%, many first-time buyers are either backing out or failing to qualify. As a result, pending sales have dropped by nearly 28%, which is a serious slowdown. Investor confidence is also fading. Many short-term rental owners are exiting the market, especially in areas that once thrived on Airbnb income. That's adding even more supply to an already crowded market. Sellers are now reducing prices by $10,000 to $20,000 just to stay competitive. And when price cuts become normal, it usually means the market is no longer in control. It's reacting. Tampa is still a major city with strong fundamentals, but in 2026, the housing market is clearly losing its heat. Number 1. Winter Haven. Quiet lakes, affordable living, and steady growth once made this city one of Central Florida's most attractive hidden gems. It wasn't flashy, but it was reliable. But in 2026, that stability is starting to fall apart faster than many expected. Home prices have dropped from around $300,000 in 2022 to nearly $275,000, a decline of over 8%. Again, not the biggest drop on paper, but what's happening underneath is far more concerning. The biggest red flag right now? Insurance costs spiraling out of control. Many homeowners are paying between $600 to $800 per month just for insurance alone. In some cases, that's higher than the actual mortgage payment. When insurance becomes more expensive than owning the home itself, the math simply stops working. Then there's the population shift. For the first time in years, more people are leaving than moving in. Rising living costs, combined with financial pressure, are pushing residents out, and that's turning once busy neighborhoods into noticeably quieter areas. Oversupply is another major issue. Developers went all in during the boom years, building large new communities expecting endless demand. But now, many of those homes are sitting empty. Builders are offering $15,000 to $20,000 discounts, upgrades, and incentives just to attract buyers. At the same time, deals are collapsing more frequently. Financing issues, appraisal gaps, and buyer hesitation are all playing a role. Some homes are even being listed below 2020 prices just to generate interest. Add in special assessments, rising maintenance costs, and overall uncertainty, and you've got a market that's not just slowing down, it's signaling deeper trouble. Winter Haven may still look peaceful on the surface, but in 2026, it's shaping up to be one of the clearest warning signs of where Florida's housing market could be heading next. So there you have it, 10 Florida cities that are starting to show serious warning signs in 2026. From rising insurance costs and falling home prices to growing inventory and collapsing demand, the patterns are becoming hard to ignore. Now here's the real question. Is this just a temporary cool down, or are we looking at the early stages of something much bigger? If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Inside the States for more deep dives into US cities, housing trends, and real estate insights that actually matter. Which of these cities surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below.